Welcome to True Crime Documentary. What happens when your best friend becomes your worst nightmare? This case will leave you questioning everything. In 2006, Tiffany Hall rushed into a hospital, carrying a lifeless newborn and claiming a tragic premature birth. However, when doctors wanted to examine her, she refused, raising suspicions. At the same time, the community was gripped by fear as a pregnant woman named Jamella Tunstall and her 3 young children went missing. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered disturbing truths that no one could have imagined. By the end of this video, you'll be left wondering what truly drives someone to commit such unthinkable acts. For starters, Tiffany wasn't exactly a newcomer in Jamella Tunstall's life. They had known each other since they were little, calling each other sisters, even though they weren't related by blood. Both girls grew up in the same neighborhood in East St. Louis, Illinois, and had a lot in common. Most people who knew them described them as quiet and a bit introverted, often hanging out together and finding comfort in each other's company amidst the ups and downs of their challenging lives. And boy, did they have challenging lives. Jamella faced a really tough childhood, moving from one foster home to another while trying her best to stay in school. It wasn't easy for her at all, but through the difficulties, she found a sense of belonging with Tiffany. They became close friends, and Tiffany understood Jamella in a way that others didn't. Meanwhile, Tiffany had her own battles to fight. By the time she turned 14, she was already making headlines for all the wrong reasons. She had gotten into trouble with the law and earned the label of a juvenile delinquent for kicking her mother. Her home life was just as chaotic, filled with strict curfews and rules that she constantly broke. It seemed like she was always butting heads with her family. In fact, Tiffany's mother, Beverly Cruz, once told the Saint Louis Post-Dispatch that Tiffany was quite the handful. She even recounted a wild story about how Tiffany had set their kitchen on fire when she was a teenager. Yet, despite everything, both Tiffany and Jamella stuck together, creating a friendship that felt unbreakable. Just like how they found solace in each other, they also shared the experience of becoming mothers at 16. Jamella welcomed her first child, a son named Deand, in 1999, and then had 2 more kids, Ivan in 2003 and Janella in 2004. Although she struggled at times, like when she lost custody of her kids for disciplining her eldest son with a belt, she fought hard to reclaim her family. After taking parenting classes, she got her children back, determined to turn her life around. She even bought a car with her tax refund and enrolled in community college, aspiring to become a photographer one day. On the other hand, Tiffany's journey was equally tumultuous when it came to parenting. Just like Jamella, she became a mother at 16, welcoming her first child into the world, followed by a second baby shortly after. But her life took a dark turn in 1999 when she lost custody of her daughters. Authorities discovered alarming evidence of severe abuse against her 2-month-old baby, painting a heartbreaking picture of neglect. Witnesses recalled seeing the infant in Tiffany's arms, limp like a rag doll, which raised immediate concerns. The injuries sustained that day would leave lasting consequences, and by the time the little girl turned 7, she still relied on diapers and struggled to communicate, often speaking in sounds that were difficult to understand. However, in 2002, both of Tiffany's daughters were returned to her care after the state attorney decided not to pursue charges of abuse against her. The Department of Children and Family Services concluded that Tiffany was no longer a threat, which meant she could finally reclaim her role as a mother. It was a big relief for her, a chance to start fresh with her kids. However, life had other plans for Tiffany. That same year, she found herself in legal trouble once again. At just 23, she was charged with possession of a stolen credit card. Meanwhile, Jamella was living a completely different life at this point. While Tiffany's world was filled with drama and chaos, Jamella had found a quieter routine that worked for her and her family. She often kept to herself, focusing on protecting her children from the tough realities of their housing project. Life wasn't easy, but Jamella was determined to create a safe space for her kids. She was a cautious mom, rarely letting her children play outside unsupervised. Whenever they did venture out, You could find Jamela sitting on a milk crate just by her door, her watchful eyes following their every move. Her kids found joy in a little green tractor, a simple toy that they shared with the neighborhood kids. It was a small but significant source of happiness in their tough surroundings. Additionally, walk her children to the school bus stop every morning, ensuring they started their day safely. By 2006, Jamela was 7 months pregnant, eagerly awaiting the arrival of a baby girl. She dreamed of a brighter future for herself and her growing family, filled with hope and possibilities. While Jamela was focused on her family's well-being and looking forward to new beginnings, Tiffany was still grappling with her own struggles. Life seemed to throw challenge after challenge at her, but despite everything, their friendship remained strong. In fact, Tiffany often took the time to babysit Jamela's kids, even though she had her own parenting troubles to manage. It all seemed okay for them, but everything changed on the evening of September 16, 2006. Tiffany made a startling call to the police, claiming she had just given birth to a stillborn child at Frank Holton Park. When she arrived at the hospital, the situation took a bizarre turn. Tiffany refused to let doctors examine her, raising immediate concerns about her story. Investigators began to question her, and as they pressed for details, her accounts became increasingly confusing. She alternated between saying she had been sexually assaulted and insisting that wasn't the case at all. No one knew Tiffany was pregnant except for her Navy boyfriend. An autopsy was performed on the baby girl, but it revealed no signs of trauma and failed to determine a clear cause of death. After that unsettling night, Tiffany left the hospital, and the lifeless infant was taken to the morgue. What's even more bizarre is that Tiffany went ahead and organized a funeral for the baby she named Tiffany Horn, just days after her dramatic claims. On September 21st, she held the service, but the event was anything but ordinary. The funeral director couldn't help but notice Tiffany's strange behavior. Just minutes before the ceremony was set to begin, she unexpectedly asked if they could move the funeral to another day so that more family members could attend. This raised eyebrows, especially since only 2 family members showed up, which seemed odd given the circumstances. To make things weirder, Tiffany showed up 2 hours late. That's not something you expect at a funeral, where people usually arrive on time to pay their respects. Among the few who did come was her boyfriend, Keith Horn. He had returned from the Navy just for this service because he believed the baby being buried was his daughter. Meanwhile, everyone was starting to get really worried about Jamela. No one seemed to know where she was, and her friends and family were feeling more anxious by the minute. They tried calling her, sending messages, and reaching out on social media, but nothing came through. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. By the way, I post true crime and new cases here every day, so if that sounds like your kind of thing, please consider subscribing. It helps a lot. It wasn't until after the funeral that Tiffany had a conversation with Keith that would change everything. Tiffany casually mentioned that she had cut the baby out of her best friend, Jamela. Those words hit Keith like a ton of bricks. His mind raced as he tried to process what she was saying. How could she claim something so horrific? Was it even possible? At that point, Keith felt a rush of panic. He knew he couldn't just sit around doing nothing. He had to protect Jamela and figure out the truth behind Tiffany's shocking confession. Without wasting any time, he grabbed his phone and dialed the police. The police wasted no time in finding Jamela's body, which had been missing for 6 long days. When they discovered her in high weeds near Tiffany's home, it sent shockwaves through the community. To make the situation even more chilling, they found a pair of scissors lying near her remains. This led to Tiffany's arrest that same night. While in custody, she began to share the horrifying details of what had happened almost a week ago. The day she delivered her baby girl, earlier that day, Jamela, who was 7 months pregnant, had been casually hanging out with Tiffany at her mother's home in Belleville. But things took a dark turn when Tiffany struck Jamela over the head with a table leg, hitting her repeatedly until Jamela became unconscious. Once Jamela was down, Tiffany took the situation to an unimaginable level. She bound Jamela's hands and feet with duct tape, ensuring she couldn't escape. At one point, Jamela regained consciousness and desperately tried to wriggle free from her restraints. But Tiffany, now completely unhinged, struck her again and taped her mouth shut to silence her cries for help. Then Tiffany dragged Jamella's lifeless body into the bathroom. In a chilling moment, Tiffany cut open Jamella's stomach with scissors in a desperate attempt to take the baby from her womb. Tragically, Jamella was still alive during this horrific act, but she lost an enormous amount of blood and eventually succumbed to her injuries. After committing such a monstrous crime, Tiffany tried to cover her tracks. She wrapped Jamella's body in a shower curtain and transported it to a weedy vacant lot behind her house, where she dumped it like garbage. What's even more unsettling is that Tiffany had been planning this for weeks. Just a week before Jamella's murder, she had purchased items for a makeshift birth kit, scissors, alcohol, and a bulb syringe. To make things even more twisted, she had been pretending to be pregnant, hoping to lure her boyfriend Keith home from the Navy under false pretenses. When the news hit that Jamella had died and Tiffany had been arrested, it horrified both their families. Both mothers were left reeling, struggling to comprehend the tragic turn of events. Just when everyone thought things couldn't get worse, another dark cloud loomed over the community. Jamella's 3 children were missing, and nobody knew where they were. The following day, Friday, September 22nd, the police sprang into action. They headed straight to Jamella's apartment, hoping to find photos of the missing kids to share with the media, hoping someone would recognize them and help bring them back. Jamella's partner, Ivan Collins, had already been questioned, and the police needed more information from him. While the police were piecing together the timeline, they learned that Tiffany's daughters were safe, but Jamella's kids were still unaccounted for. The officers reached out to Ivan again, hoping he could shed light on the situation. He mentioned that he had last seen the children 3 days earlier, on the 18th, but when he was asked about their whereabouts since then, he said they had been with him before leaving with Tiffany that same night. This raised even more eyebrows as the investigation continued. Tiffany was still in custody, and it wasn't long before she spilled the beans about where the kids were. This confession led the police back to Jamella's apartment the next morning. But what they found was nothing short of horrifying. As they stepped inside, a dreadful smell hit them, a sickening stench that made it clear something was terribly wrong. It was then that they discovered the heartbreaking truth: the naked and decomposing bodies of Jamella's 3 children. 2 were crammed inside the washing machine, and the 3rd was found in the dryer. They had been left there for 5 long days, and the police had unknowingly walked right past that horrifying scene just the day before. It was a chilling realization that no one could have prepared for, deepening the tragedy of the whole situation. Tiffany's confession to the children's murders added another layer of horror to an already unimaginable crime. Now let's take a closer look at Tiffany's side of the story. On September 18th, just 3 days before the funeral, and shortly after she had committed the unthinkable act against Jamella and her unborn baby, Tiffany had more plans in store. She spun a big lie to Ivan, claiming that Jamella wanted her kids in her car. This sneaky story allowed Tiffany to pick up 7-year-old Deand, 2-year-old Ivan, and 10-month-old Janella. Once she had them, Tiffany casually told the kids it was time for a bath. But instead of a fun splash, one by one, she drowned them in the same bathtub where she had killed their mother. Some reports even say that she drugged the kids with cough syrup before putting them in the tub, making it even easier for her to carry out her horrific plan. After the terrible act, Tiffany stuffed their tiny bodies into the washer and dryer of Jamella's apartment in the John Shields housing complex. By this point, she had not only taken her best friend's life and that of Jamella's unborn baby, but also confessed to the murders of her 3 children. All the kids were naked, except for a pair of underpants on one of them. Surprisingly, Tiffany never gave any reason for why she killed Jamella's kids, leaving everyone puzzled. Why would someone take the life of their best friend? What could drive a woman to harm 3 innocent kids? Did Tiffany really have a miscarriage, or was she ever even pregnant? Did she struggle with mental health issues? The questions seemed never-ending. Jamella's funeral took place on September 29, 2006, and it was a massive gathering, with over 700 people showing up to pay their respects. Friends and family shared stories about Jamella's bright, childlike smile, the way her face lit up when she talked about her kids, and how she often got bored easily. People remembered her children's unique personalities too, bringing warmth to an otherwise tragic day. The community really came together, raising more than $330,000 in just 3 days to help cover the funeral costs for Jamela and her children. Initially, Tiffany was only charged with the murder of Jamela and her unborn daughter, but as the investigation unfolded, 3 more murder charges were added for the children. At first, Tiffany pleaded not guilty, leading to a psychiatric evaluation. She started with a public defender, but when the state announced it would pursue the death penalty, she was given a new lawyer experienced in such serious cases, James Gomry. One of Tiffany Hall's lawyers mentioned that while Tiffany was deemed mentally fit to stand trial, she also had some serious mental health issues going on and scored in the mid-70s on the IQ scale. What sets Tiffany apart from other women who have committed similar crimes is that she already had kids of her own. Her daughters were just 7 and 8 years old at the time of the murders. On June 10, 2008, Tiffany was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the horrific crime of murdering 5 people, including Jamela and her children. However, in September 2008, Tiffany tried to backtrack on her guilty plea, claiming her lawyer didn't do a good job defending her. Fortunately, the court shot down her request. In 2012, she filed another petition asking for a new lawyer, arguing that her trial attorneys weren't up to par. That one didn't get anywhere either. But Tiffany didn't give up. She felt strongly that her lawyers didn't properly investigate her mental health or whether she was fit to stand trial. In her petition, Tiffany claimed that her lawyer didn't even get the paperwork for her psychiatric evaluation until 2 days after she had already entered her guilty plea. The report from a second psychiatrist who was supposed to determine if she was sane at the time of the crime was stamped as received on June 11, 2008, while Tiffany had made her plea on June 9. A different report from an earlier evaluation said she was fit to stand trial, but didn't assess her sanity when the crime happened. That second report revealed that Tiffany had a long history of mental health issues that started in her childhood and included multiple hospitalizations. To back up her appeal, records from evaluations done after her plea showed diagnoses of several serious conditions: psychotic disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, mood disorder, bipolar disorder, and mild mental retardation. Because of all this, the court decided to reverse Tiffany's denial of post-conviction relief, which meant she could keep fighting her case. Tiffany's petition went through several revisions, with new attorneys working on it throughout 2015 and 2016. They were granted a bunch of extensions to get it right. She even asked for a new attorney again, but that request was denied too. Eventually, the court dismissed her petition because it didn't meet the necessary requirements. But Tiffany wasn't done yet. She appealed this decision, claiming her lawyer didn't do enough to amend the petition properly. In 2020, Tiffany finally got a break and won her appeal, giving her another shot at filing a petition for relief. It looks like Tiffany's case might be stuck in the appeals process for quite a while, but at least Jamela's family can find some comfort in knowing she's behind bars. Now, at 42 years old, Tiffany is being held at Logan Correctional Center in Lincoln, Illinois. One source noted that Jamela's stillborn baby girl was exhumed and reburied alongside Jamela and her 3 other children in a cemetery in Illinois. With all that said, Tiffany's case stands as one of the most disturbing crimes ever committed by a woman. It's a chilling reminder that no matter how well we think we know someone, we can never truly understand what they're capable of. Now we ask you again, is life in prison enough for what she did? Let us know in the comments below. If you like the way we create these videos and you want to help bring more cases like this to light, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives. Thank you once again for watching.